So I actually have up on here a screenshot of our main SSDAN site, which you can find at ssdan.net, or if you just Google SSDAN, you'll typically find us as the first link. Now, to get to DataCounts, you can either put in the full URL, which is fairly simple in its own right, ssdan.net/DataCounts, or you can go to ssdan.net and then click on the DataCounts link or DataCounts image a little ways down the screen. If you're interested in some of our other products, some of the other things that we have, I do recommend spending a little bit of time on the ssdan.net site. But if we click on that DataCounts link, what it will do is take us to kind of the DataCounts section of our site. Here's where we have the data, which you can search for by trying to look for different variables. You can try to browse the collections of data sets that we have, and those collections are usually at the survey level. Is this a Census 2000? Pretty soon we're going to be having things like Census 2010, different American Community Survey, vintages, I guess, that sort of stuff. So that's actually one of the easiest ways to get there. But one of the first things you might want to do is actually go to the how-to, and this is where you can get a little tour of the site. You can see some of the things that we have. We're going to be talking about WebChip later today, but there's a little tutorial on how to use WebChip. Also have a link to all of our modules. I think this might be a slightly dated screenshot, but it shows 97 modules. I think we might be up from that slightly, but you can search for different modules by the grade level that you're looking for, or by the broad subject terms that are over on the left. It's called kind of faceted searching, trying to limit the search based on some kind of general characteristic that you're interested in. I would like to mention that if you do create any modules that you would like to share with the community, please feel free to use the Submit a Module interface, and you can send that. We'll take a quick look at it and usually post it online fairly quickly. We're happy to put out any of the adaptations or original modules that you may create.
JP, I have a quick question. Is DataCounts is now linked to SERC, the Science Education Resource Center, as well?
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you. Yeah. So I would just recommend. There's also the Science Education Research Center, and it's a wonderful source for faculty, and all the materials and DataCounts also link to that larger, I think it's a very large set of modules that faculty can use in their classroom for various types of teaching, not just quantitative literacy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and in fact, they're doing a lot of work on quantitative literacy, but there are also other modules that go even beyond sociology. They have economics modules. I believe there might be some in political science. So if you're teaching any of those courses within the sociology department, there may be some overlap. You might find what you're looking for there as well. Here we just have a glossary. I think this is a little bit out of date, but a glossary of some of the data set collections that I had mentioned earlier. The different American Community Survey vintages, the Centennial Census, current population survey, and we don't have many general social survey data sets, but we know that a lot of people are interested in that, so we're looking at putting a little bit more work into that to create a few more, but there are a handful in there. To actually find and use the data sets, those data sets will open in WebChip, which I'll get to in a little bit, but the data sets you can browse to is probably the easiest way to find them, and that's looking at the different collections that I just mentioned, or if you prefer to, you can try to search based on some kind of keyword search, or if you happen to know how to get to the data set already, you can enter the full data set name, but I would recommend that only if you're very comfortable with this. And then this is just listing again the collection. So continue on to WebChip. And what is WebChip? Well, WebChip is actually based off of an earlier program that some of you may be familiar with, something called StudentChip, which is a Chippendale program, I think it was originally called. And that was, originally created, I believe, by Jim Davis and Ruth Bogart out of Harvard in the 80s. Is a way to try to make these small data sets available for students to use. It's a simple, just cross-tabulation program. The whole idea of it is to be just very easy to use. So an interface that doesn't require multiple class periods to learn, something like one of the problems with something like SAS or SPSS. The whole idea behind StudentChip and WebChip is that you can learn how to use it and start working with it within one class period. StudentChip is the older version, which we do still have available. I believe it's still under license by Ruth Bogart. If you're interested in that, we can feel free to send us an email at the end of the webinar. But typically, what we're using now is something called WebChip, which is the web-based application, which has most of the same functionality that was in StudentChip.
And I was just going to add that, you know, at Sinclair Community College, our students have no problem using WebChip, and actually they learn it really quickly, sometimes quicker than faculty do. So it's really a great interface with a lot of functionality, and it's really easy to use too, and it's really improved over the years, has wonderful color graphics and things that students can do when they create tables. So I was just going to talk a little bit about and kind of remind us where we had started, and we were talking about the importance of using contingency tables. And for today, I'm going to mostly just focus on the relationships between two variables. And you can introduce control variables using WebChip, and I think that's a very important thing to do in an introductory course. But what I'm going to do today is save that for hopefully another webinar in the future, because I think it adds there's a whole another level of pedagogy and helping students understand what a control variable really is. So like I was talking about earlier, I personally think, and part of it just comes from my background in faculty development and also pedagogical practice, that it makes good pedagogical practice to make sure students understand independent, dependent variable, how to read a table before introducing them to the topic of contingency tables. And then if we're thinking about scaffolding along the way, make sure they understand how to do a contingency table and then introduce control variable. And there's some exercises that I have found very helpful for that. And I'll be glad to email those to you or talk to those about that if you have questions. And so one of the questions that you can do if you're going to do a contingency table, so if I were going to talk about income, for example, and what various social factors impact income, I could start by having students develop the questions and then help them look at a particular table to examine some of the questions. And in fact, that's a really great thing to do. I also teach online, so I thought I would add that I teach a social problems course online, and I have changed my whole course to a case study perspective. And 2 of the 4 case studies are using WebChip and studying modules that are part of SSDAN and completing those and writing a paper on it. And I've been able to do that in an online environment with really relatively small directions, and students have been quite capable at a community college to complete modules online with really little to no direction, and they've been doing really well on those over the last